gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor to welcome you all to the first ever NEXT Pharma Summit webinar. My name is Dario. I'm the chairman of NEXT Pharma Summit, and it's really a great pleasure and honor to welcome you all once again. The interest actually is quite high, quite interesting, because I suppose the topic itself is extremely hot those days, since all reps and field users are grounded. So that's why we will discuss with some pretty amazing pharma leaders how and if, of course, medical reps will survive the pandemic. So from left to right, I would kind of like to welcome Davidek Herron from Teva. Hi, Davidek, how are you?
Hey, Dario.
Haider Alleg from Ferring. Hey, Haider.
Hey, guys. Hello, Dario.
Marc Valdiviezo from Indegene. Hi, Marc.
Hi, saying hello from New York.
And of course, Dirk Abeel from Reckit Benckiser. Before we dive deep in the conversation itself and start our interaction, I would kind of like to showcase some interesting slides. And first of all, it's obvious to see and hear that pharma is finally doing the digital transformation. And this means I found this very interesting and intriguing slide. First of all, I'm in the industry already for 12 years. And already for more than 10 years, we hear day by day that pharma should implement the digital transformation, when it will be implemented, etc. And we see these weeks, I would say, that we are finally on this step and this curve to implement finally many steps digitally. And this is somehow and maybe unfortunately triggered by COVID-19. Today's session is, of course, going into predicting things, what will happen with a medical rep, how will the future look like. And I made some research and find out that the medical rep or the detail man exists since 1850, so already for 170 years. This is according to the former professor of medicine at Johns Hopkins, William Osler. And it's interesting to mention that the medical rep itself didn't change a lot in these 170 years. And today, with this whole crisis, with this whole pandemic of COVID-19, I believe that things will change. We will see how it will change, and we will see if we speak about a revolution or an evolution. But first of all, actually, how good are we at predicting things? I made some interesting research and just introduced some very interesting data that, for instance, the life expectancy will raise past 100 by 2020, according to the very futuristic Ray Kurzweil, or that, for instance, humans will set foot on Mars by 2017. This was predicted in 1996. Or very interesting that Boris Johnson would lead the Brexit, according to Independent back in 1997, or that, for instance, nuclear will replace natural gas by 2020. We all see that actually humans are not good at predicting anything, and it's quite challenging today to predict how the future of the medical rep will look like. But for me personally, what's very intriguing is the fact about oil. As we all know, we know that everyone is claiming already for 50 years that in 5 years' time there won't be any oil. And for instance, Richard Smiley, a Nobel laureate in chemistry in 1996, he predicted that actually the peak of oil will be by 2020. We all know that this is not the case, and this once again really proves that we are not good at predicting, and maybe we should rephrase our question, how good are we at predicting to how bad are we at predicting? Personally, I think that people are not capable to predict things because we don't have the data, we don't have the bigger picture, but that's why we are here today. And my personal opinion is that the medical rep itself, as the one who represents another or other pharma company, will exist in the future on short term, on long term. The only question is if we will speak about a revolution or an evolution. And this is why we gathered here today. So I would like to start with our first question, which is reps are grounded for a month already. How and when did your company react? I suggest we can start with Davidek from Teva because he's sharing some fresh and very interesting insights. So Davidek, please, can you start maybe with answering this very first and very interesting question?
Thanks, Dario. So it's an interesting situation that we're in. This is something that none of us have ever lived through in our lives, right? So the reality is we do have majority of all of our commercial teams or even field teams grounded globally, right? So I shared some stats that came from the Viva Pulse data, where we saw just from, let's say, January to March, 61% of face-to-face visits have decreased. We're going to continue to see those trends. But we are seeing, surprisingly, is a lot of the companies are now leveraging these digital, let's say, capabilities for these reps. And I shared some stuff on LinkedIn today where we saw that just from March 10th to March 17th, there was actually 112% increase in rep-driven emails to physicians, right? But what we saw also was around 688% increase just in a matter of 2 weeks of scheduled events for virtual meetings. And actually, I think the increase was 395% increase in actual meetings that happened. So this shows on two fronts. This shows that a lot of the life science companies are actually leveraging the current digital capabilities they have available. And secondarily, it shows that customers are actually resonating to this. Now, the question is, at what point does this hit a plateau? Does it overexceed? Some companies will be good, some companies might not. And at what point are we truly adding value to our customers? So just from a foundation perspective, what we're seeing is the reality, reps are at home, medical teams, all our key account managers, everyone is at home, and they're trying to figure out how they can best service their customers in the field.
And this data is coming from Teva worldwide or some particular countries?
So this is actually all pharma. So this is not Teva data. This is all pharma on the Viva CRM platform, which is over 100,000 users, 600 companies that this data is coming from. So this is actually the Viva Pulse data. So this is really the pulse of the industry.
Okay. Haider, would you like to give your maybe perspective about this question?
Yeah, so for us, it came through our Chinese colleagues and APAC colleagues that got hit by the wave first. So we learned a lot from them. And then the reaction from us was mostly, how can we train our sales rep, or how can we, as a company, get ready for COVID-19 and for post-COVID-19 as well? So to take the opportunity of having the sales rep home for making the best out of this time. Then it was our US colleagues that also reacted pretty quickly to the situation by preparing materials, training modules. So what it generated, funny enough, we never collaborated as much as now, and it's just, we don't even think that the company is transforming digitally. We just have the need to share knowledge to make sure that we will go through. In terms of timing, right now what we have is mainly best practice sharing, Congress that get cancelled everywhere and then. So we are also trying to work together with HCP Association to just make sure that the interactions are not stopped at the group level or conference level as well in different therapeutic areas. So that's where we are.
And are they moving online, the conferences and congresses, or they are just postponed or canceled for some better times?
A lot of them are moving online towards virtual events, and I have to say it's also new to those HCP associations. So it's not that they had the capability, all of them before. So it's actually for us interesting to stand as a business partner as well in those time of needs, to say we're here to make it happening as well. I think it's a great time of showing collaboration and a bit of innovation as well.
Mm-hmm. Dirk, you shared some very interesting slides. Maybe you can give the answer together with this very interesting insight about how can we optimize the omni-channel engagement.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dario. So what this is indicating is, I think that everyone has been facing in one or another way. We are all getting ready to go omni-channel. What really happened, this COVID was really the catalyst to really catapult us to a space where we maybe were thinking of landing in 4 or 5 years. So that also is related to your question, explaining that certain markets were better prepared than others. And I think the market that was best prepared, and Haider already said it, was where it all began in China. And I think that's also based on how they are structured, also what happened in the past, the regulations, the e-commerce, and etc., etc. So they moved very quickly from a mixed model to 100% online. And the funny part, if I can use this expression, is they are moving back to a mixed model today, whilst in the rest of the world, as Davidek mentioned, we are all grounded. All the people are working from home, including ourselves. So very different kind of reactions. But the speed has surprised me. And again, also what we saw in North America was that they moved very fast, where mainly everything was happening in the traditional model to a 100% online of presence, including training of their people, keeping their people engaged and reaching out to healthcare providers. The rest of the world, I would say, is a different picture due to many reasons, which we can elaborate on later. But again, I think the big lesson is, okay, you can never be prepared enough. And it's a question of getting all hands on deck and looking at the same direction. And what definitely is a reality is the future, I think, looks quite good, because every one of us had a ton of learnings, which hopefully we will start embracing and leveraging for the better.
In normal times and normal cases, right? What I wonder is, we all know that pharma is very regulated. We document many processes, things, etc. But did anybody had in his company a contingency plan for such scenario if a massive epidemic happens? What to do, how to engage, etc.
Yeah, Dario, that's actually an interesting question, right? So I don't think anyone's ever planned for this, but I think it actually goes into our overall plans, like Dirk had mentioned before, where we've been going down this journey a long time to understand how can we best service our customers in a more broader reach, right? So I think if anything, this is like accelerating the current, let's say, digital transformation that we're partaking in the industry. That's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We were not prepared, but what I remember now is we are already more than 1 month here grounded in the UK, is the need for human interaction has, I would say, even became even more important. So this is for me already giving a strong indication that the medical sales interaction with our healthcare providers and the healthcare environment in general, it's something there that is there to stay. It will change definitely, but this human touch stays very important. And I think that's for me already a first big key takeaway out of this first month facing the crisis, literally, but also if you look at China, which is getting back to normal, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, I agree with that. We will see the first indicators in Europe should be once the restaurants and pubs are opening. We will see how many people will go to those places, right? Let's move further. Second question, very interesting one. We all know that pharma is really putting lots of efforts in training people, in making the proper education, etc. But are field users really enough trained for such type of situations? And have you been prepared personally in your company? Maybe we can start this time with Haider.
Yeah, so on the training side, I would say you can never get trained. I mean, we didn't have drills or simulations, you know, in case of this thing happen. What I can share with you is that the response from our frontline colleagues is that they use common sense. So some of them just try to contact the doctor in a empathic way. So when it was possible, because some of the therapeutic area we work within, you know, some of the doctor went on also the front line in the hospital, so we couldn't join all of them. But at least being on the listening mode, this wasn't, I mean, you call it common sense or you call it just being a good key account managers, right? They've done it without, you know, any push. Now where we do see the need for training is not all the countries are the same. So we said that APAC was a little bit more mature. APAC, in our case, APAC was US, were a bit more mature in terms of dealing with online and remote customer engagement. What we saw that is taking a little bit of effort is the organization of group meetings online, the question around data privacy, you know, what types of can I just put my credit card and use, a tool without, thinking of all the repercussions. So this is where the training and having a company that is putting a framework for working on those is important. So this is where we are basically focusing our efforts since a couple of weeks now to provide this framework for the company to have one vocabulary around remote engagement.
Do you already measure somehow how the people are responding to this new situation in terms of training? Are they aligned with the central messaging, etc.?
I mean, if you look into the training we're providing, we started really by issuing simple infographics, simple white papers, some reminders that some corporate guidelines existed. We also started to create a portfolio listing, just listing all the over the world. So I would call it common sense, but in this time of need, you will be surprised as how people are reacting in a really positive way. So people are just filling up Excel spreadsheets on OneDrive, saying that I'm organizing, and things are happening. So somehow it's a mix of both. Some push of materials or reminders. I think that was good, and some bottom-up activities that really came from the field. And our role in global was to make sure that we pick it up and cross-fertilize it across the company.
Thank you, Haider. Dirk, would you like maybe to start now a second?
Yes. What I would like to say is it has proven again how dynamic big organizations can be. And I wanted almost to say we should always be in crisis modus because suddenly a lot of things seem to be possible which before were not possible. So also again, it's about funneling all this energy in the benefit of everyone, because obviously our people, or not all our people, were properly trained to do omni-channel, even though we were in the phase of preparation before COVID. But the solidarity across all the countries has been really striking me a lot. Best practice sharing of certain programs in a very open manner, helping each other out. So the catch up across the leaders and the lagging markets is going very fast. And I think the role of global is really to coordinate this kind of effort, giving each one the floor, because this is a fantastic opportunity to recognize and acknowledge the talents which we are having in different markets, and to give them this platform on a global scale in the interest of the whole organization. But more importantly is exactly, and I liked what Haider said, is this natural empathy that which you show to your customers first of all. It's not about your product at that moment. It's about what they are facing. It's really, this is pushing us again to the heart of what is customer centricity about. What is putting your customer at the heart of what we are doing? And I can hope that this mindset is a shift which will stay there after we pass this kind of crisis.
So you think that we maybe are now in a phase to put much more emotion in the whole story? Do you think that this is something what we can state?
I would say yes, of course, in the right balance. It's not that we have to be over emotional, but it's to, I think if we really believe that we can add value, what we do, all of us in one or another way, it's taking the person to whom we are talking serious, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are managing all the concerns which they are facing with their patients and which are faced by the patients themselves. So at the end of the day, this is really a win-win situation. So it's also a strong message for our internal headquarters and to our brand teams is we are not selling products, we are selling solutions. And that is what we should keep ahead.
Exactly, Dirk. And just to reiterate what you're saying there, I think that's key. It goes down to what value can we actually provide. And I think during this time, what we're seeing as well, both even outside my company, a lot of brands are kind of being put on the board and saying, all right, what value are we actually providing to our customers? Are we just spamming them with information that's already available? Or are we actually providing some type of service or some type of value add? So I think right now is a really good time for a lot of our, our companies to look in the mirror and say, all right, are we truly providing a good service to our customers? And if not, then maybe during these times, maybe silence might be the key, right? Because I mean, this could have a lot of backlash on some companies that will then, let's say, use these certain channels and continue to aggressively try to get a message across because they have something to achieve. So I think what I am seeing though from a lot of my peers is that we are taking this the right way. You know, we are putting people first. Dirk, to your point, it's about the people, not the technology. And how can we truly understand what's valuable and what do they need from us, and how can we all get through this together?
So if this is focused around the customer, then I think the question about training and preparation should go beyond just the field users, right? One part is to provide them technology and enable them to use it. But just as my colleagues alluded to, if you ultimately want to have an impact on the customer and provide value, then is the rest of the organization aligned to enable the reps to deliver that? You know, one thing you want to think about is content supply chain in this context, variability or even adjustment of messages in this context, so that the reps do not just have the channel, but they actually have the services and content available to deliver a good experience during this time.
Thank you, Marc. So we are in some very interesting times, as we all
Actually,
stated.
I wanted to
Haider has
piggyback on what
something.
you said. Can I?
Of course, please.
Yeah, can I add something, Dario?
Please, please,
Yeah.
Haider, please.
So I wanted to share that indeed the repurpose of content. So the repurpose of content is pretty much where we see some roadblocks. Pretty much where we want to unlock situations, the content creation or content repurposing or translating existing material becomes a hurdle. The second aspect of it is that in terms of the empathy, we've seen something interesting in China, where usually we see those digital channels as a means to orchestrate content, the right audience at the right time, with the right message. We've seen that the rep was kind of the dispatcher, and the content was really served on on the shelves, and the doctor were going through that. And what we foresee for the post-COVID-19 situation is a little bit that Chinese model where doctors will come to potentially platforms of value because they understand that we have a value there, and the sales rep will much more be this human being facilitating objections or deep dive into the content rather than just pushing messages. So I think there is really a shift in the way we are dealing with content and content dissemination, and the role of the sales rep in that content dissemination.
Absolutely. I can also say that I fully agree with you, Haider. I would say that we have so many beautiful softwares out there on the market. It's almost limitless, but key is still content. I mean, if you feed to those softwares bad content, then of course nobody wants to use that. And I would say that this is also maybe in parallel going together with the learning phase of the reps and how to introduce those content and how actually to communicate it towards our ATPs. Okay, let's move further. I would say very interesting question, which is how did you overcome global IT procedures, standards, GDPR, and the other barriers? Because once again, we all know that pharma is very regulated. We have many things centralized. GDPR as a very, let's say, special and unique European law is out there. So actually, I hear these days many times, really many times, that people are literally saying, I don't care about GDPR, I just want to send out emails to communicate with my customers and to wait for better times when I will care about GDPR. So what's your impression and thought about that? Maybe we can start now with Dirk and his impressions about that.
Yeah, that's a hot potato question, I would say, because exactly if you're working for a big corporation, there are a lot of rules. There is compliance for a reason. And I think what we've seen is a lot of creativity in the different markets in how to tackle it. And I agree. It's important in crisis times that you can communicate with your HCPs, because anyhow, you were talking with them before, mainly face to face. Having said that, what we still keep on doing is trying to get the consent, even if it is as a secondary objective, because you need to stay compliant. I think we cannot say it's going bad, there is a bad situation, so we forget about compliance. No, I think you can still do a lot. You can still communicate within compliance, and meanwhile gathering compliance and respecting again the HCP's time, because at the end of the day, he will decide if he has the time and if he wants to talk to you. And that's also related to the history. If you had a good relationship, value-adding relationship, you will get the time. So we keep on working on gathering consent. At the same time, what we also see is that a lot of personal communication channels, being it personal email, WhatsApp, SMS, are getting activated within compliance frame because it is important to move fast. And you know how it goes. If you look at from an IT governance perspective, there are not directly shortcuts. So we need to have a mitigation plan on the short, mid, and long term. Long term, we all agree we need to go to corporate communication channels, being it WhatsApp, WeChat, etc., connected to your CRM, and so on and so forth. But the reality is today, we are in a very volatile, ambiguous environment, which we need to manage up to the best. And I have to say, there's a good pragmatic understanding between the headquarters, the IT people, and what the business and our customers are needing today.
Davidek?
Yeah, so this is a good response there, Dirk. So I would say first and foremost, right, I believe that everyone is following the GDPR and the current local regulations in regards to contacting customers, right? And thankfully at Teva, we did a good job the last 2 years of actually prioritizing, digital communication or just connections with our customers. So I mean, a lot of the markets did specifically put together their own plans in accordance with GDPR to figure out how we can not only just get consent from the customers, but understand from a personalization perspective, how do they want to be communicated? What subjects resonate with these customers, right? So I think it's less around just gaining consent and being able to email them. It's more understanding who is your customers, what value can we add to them, and then that's actually now showing off today where it's to our benefit, where we do have access to many of our customers to able to have these kind of interactions. But for the situations where we don't, I mean, this is a good opportunity, to Dirk's point, for us to continue to show value. And if there's value there, then obviously our customers want to reach out to us, and then we can have that conversation. But yeah, it's interesting. So again, but how do you overcome kind of some of these obstacles? Is just having those conversations, right? Including all these teams, right? The global teams, the IT security, procurement, legal, regulatory, you name it. What I am seeing during this time, which a lot of you guys alluded to earlier in this call, is everyone's getting together during these times and mobilizing to solve the greater good, right? And I think that's just amazing. It's just amazing to see what people are doing during these times. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Improvising, for sure.
Definitely. Agile.
Exactly. Haider?
Yes, so I would say on our side, we send a note from Global to say this is not changing anything. It's not because it's on digital that suddenly it's the far west and everything can be done, right? So we just reinforce that it's just another channel, and the same experience, from a compliance perspective should follow. In terms of data privacy, we look at it as an opportunity to do privacy by design, and it's an opportunity. Any touch point is an opportunity to ask a customer what's his preference in terms of being contacted. So some countries, and unfortunately, didn't had all the consent to reach. So we are supporting them, but mainly we didn't waited COVID-19 to have this mindset of using GDPR as an opportunity. So fortunately for us, it was actually positive. And the IT team right now is under fire because they are doing so much on helping from a CRM perspective, or from building website, helping us with webinars. So it has been a bit tough on them right now. So yeah, so I would say we are more looking at them as the builders of something that can stand for 1,000 users, 2,000 users, 3,000 users. So hopefully they are coping with the pressure now.
I suppose that digital and IT people are actually running their companies these days, right? So they are actually the CEOs for the time being, since we are moving back to normal.
Unfortunately, I would say it should not be the case, right? So it should be. So right now, I'm feeling more like a coach. Honestly, I'm feeling more like people are much more receptive. They are more listening to us internally than just a good idea from an agency that sometimes pops up. So the feeling of having one answer that is a definition from one company to those digital tactics or strategies is higher than before, for sure. I'm not feeling that that suddenly things will dramatically change. I feel that marketing, medical, and sales organization have the appetite for doing more of it, more than creating a black box called digital. You know, so it's just a personal feeling that I'm having, but it feels to me that this is them transforming, not a digital team growing.
No, I even think that it brought. Sorry, I even think that it brought IT a lot closer to the business and in the heart of the business, yeah, where it should be.
Yeah, true.
Marc, how do you see that, let's say, whole regulation stuff and reaction possibilities from a vendor perspective?
Yeah, so you know, Indegene, we partner with a number of global large pharma and biotech organizations to see on what we can do in the short term and develop strategies for the longer term through this crisis, because there are some dynamics that are changing. Now, as Haider mentioned, some companies have actually been very actively already approaching all these topics and see an acceleration of that. But some other companies have been caught a little bit off guard, as with their focus on digital and their preparedness to address these issues of compliance and technical capabilities and legal. So they're scrambling. I think in the short term, we are okay of cutting some corners across the industry. By the way, the same is happening for our customers, the doctors. They're doing telemedicine. They weren't prepared for it on all these questions here as well. And we're seeing a relaxation of standards such as HIPAA standards here in the US are officially lessened, so that doctors in a short term can provide the service that patients need. I think to a certain degree will be in our industry given a similar short term, reasonable degree of leeway to continue to drive some continuity. But the expectation that this will all be up to par eventually, sooner rather than later, is definitely there. So yeah, you want to experiment a little bit and take some risks in the short term. I think that's smart, and you want to be getting away with that. But you need to put a solid strategy in place to be able to be fully compliant and legally and regulatory wise compliant if you want to continue on that route.
That's a good point, Marc. I can also say that the question is if HCPs are really ready in overall to communicate, let's say, wholly through digital and to, let's say, have this 180 degree in terms of communication change. So do you think that they are willing or capable to do that? Of course, it depends how old they are and about the structure, etc.
So if you have, if you have the chance to actually experience the world of your providers and patients as it relates to health and health services, take it. So for example, here in the US, I'm listening almost every other day into the New York Department of Health daily COVID update to healthcare professionals, where they're advising doctors how to handle a crisis from a medical perspective, but also all other aspects around. And there's significant time spent on very actively, aggressively driving doctors to provide telehealth solutions, because they want to keep the hospitals that are still open as free as possible, keep people out of the ER that would be at risk if they present themselves there, as well as many offices actually shut down operations just like any other business. They're providing a minimum of service, if any at all. And in that context, obviously, we don't want to see people in the office if they can. So the official stance of the authorities is, so I've been people actually hearing them on the phone say, okay, don't worry about HIPAA right now. As long as you're doing your best with whatever platform you have available, whether it's FaceTime or Skype or Zoom or GoToMeeting, use it and we'll figure things out later. Right now, you're safe. Right? So they're officially basically relaxing these standards and government regulations to ensure continuity. But throughout that, beyond that, you see customers trying to figure out on, meaning our providers, how to open their offices again in this environment.
Exactly. So back to normal for sure. Let's move further. Very interesting question, because actually we are having already some concrete data about that. And this is which key remote channels already paid off And do they somehow vary on country or regional level? Because of course, I would say that it really varies the percentage of digital usage if you compare, for instance, US and some other countries, even Germany, France, etc. Marc, maybe you can start first by providing the answer on that very interesting question.
Yeah, so what we're seeing again is a short and longer term dynamic. And I think in the short term, it's a great success. And I'm personally also very excited, having been in this part of the business for quite some time, that there is a shift toward digital, the willingness of everybody pulling together and making a transition. That being said, that also has some counter dynamics, which with all companies starting to increase the volume, whether it's remote reps or any other digital engagement, the noise level and the overwhelming of the customers is increasing. With that, you can also see a decrease in the customer's willingness to engage there again, unless you provide real value. The other part is our customers, especially HCPs, but also patients, are currently going through disruption themselves, right? So what I want to say is it's not about the channel that you actually use, but are you driving effective communication and engagement in that channel is what determines whether you have a payoff or not. And that starts all the way from frequency, using the channel in the right total activity, as well as the information you transmit throughout. So our most successful customers are even adjusting their messages. So for example, we're in allergy season right now in New York. Is the happy animated allergy mascot the right way to communicate to their customers in this scenario? Maybe not. Maybe you want to hit a different tone, and then you get a better engagement, right? And so the combination of what you offer, the services, the messages, the context, the tone that you have, determines the channel success. And in the long run, I think we need to come to a different solution altogether. Let me get to the next question.
I would like to continue with Davidek because he sent some very interesting stats, which he actually already mentioned it in his introduction during this webinar. Davidek, how do you see this? Let's say which channels are paying off? Maybe we can look even further into these statistics which you shared with us.
Yeah, so again, I think it's less than channels paying off. Again, remember the main goal here is right to get the right medicines to patients in need, right? And that's something that I continue to reiterate with all our internal and external users as well. And are we successful doing that depends on how we interact with our customers, right? So if you can look at these stats, as you can see, again, the industry is leveraging these let's say digital channels. I mean, if you look at the pure P&L or the spend behind it, obviously the cost per engagement is lower digitally than it was potentially when you had a face-to-face visit. Now you take the option of face-to-face not available, what options do they actually have, right? One thing I say from a technology perspective, if you want to talk about paying, is the fact that, as you know, a lot of the main CRM providers are now providing, let's say, 6 months for free trials, right? So I mean, I know Viva, IQVIA, everyone, all these big players are offering the option of having, let's say, 6 months of free virtual meetings, right? So, and a lot of companies are taking advantage of this. I don't think it's necessarily a cost thing we should be looking at. It's more, again, how effective are these channels, and are companies leveraging them, and our marketing teams leveraging the right content, right? So obviously our marketing teams are doing the right audits of the content, but then are they able to disseminate these in the right channel, in the right format, right? From a technical perspective, but also even from a user acceptance as well. So I think you have to look at it in two fronts there. But again, if you look at the statistics here, if you look at just pure emails and virtual meetings, we are seeing statistically, right? Again, this is over 100,000 users and 600 companies. I mean, approved emails, I mean, the open rates are still above 35, 36%, which, as you know, from email marketing is pretty high, right? So which means the content we're delivering to customers at least is being viewed. And if you look at the average, let's say, meeting duration, we're seeing that still above 16 minutes, right? So, and again, this is a big sample size. We're talking over 100,000 reps globally. So the channels themselves, I believe, are paying off just because we're able to deliver our message. The question is, what is the long-term view of this? This is very segmented data of a short time period. My question is, if this crisis proceeds and continues on 2, 3, 4 months from now, I'm not sure if that'll still be the reality, because that's then going to charge our teams internally to really continue to provide that service or that content that is valuable for them. So back to your original question around, sorry?
So this is maybe the peak for the time being, right?
No, we haven't seen a peak yet, right? Peak's
Okay.
not there yet, because still a lot of my peers are still getting these, let's say, solutions available. Some are, it's like a bell curve, right? You have some companies that have already been doing it and that's scaled it. Some companies are going to start doing it because they haven't done it before, and other companies won't do it. And the ones that don't do it, we'll see how they fare out at the end, because regardless, the model is going to change. That's yes and yes. And I mean, they just might become obsolete. So that's something, again, it's not necessarily, you mentioned before, IT and digital is running it. No, at the end of the day, business is still running the show. It's just what channels and levers are they pulling during times like these to make sure they effectively hit their goals.
Thank you. Dirk, you shared these interesting slides with us. Maybe you can explain.
That's borrowed with pride from ZS Associates, but I like these slides. But before I go there, I would like to make an analogy with where we were coming from, let's say 10 years ago, when all pharmacy companies were sending different teams representing the same brand, different packaging, different dosage, etc., which has led to oversaturation. And as a result, has led to the fact that more and more physicians were closing their doors. So I make exactly the same analogy with what we're facing today with Omni-channel. And Marc mentioned it. Okay, if you are going to keep on doing the same and bombarding HCPs with all kind of things, guys, we are again destroying our own kind of business. So we have to be smarter. And for me, what will be critical is that we again is the quality and the reliability of your content, and is this content available when I as a physician want it? That for me will all be key parameters which will decide which companies will survive in this kind of omni-channel jungle we are facing today, and will keep on driving this kind of engagement with the HCPs. So which brings me to this slide where I've always been a strong believer in this, that the medical sales rep of tomorrow should be the orchestrator of this whole omni-channel engagement, which means that, and I mentioned it before, it stays a very human-faced business. And Dario, in your introduction, you mentioned the last 200 years, when we talk about medical sales rep, not a lot has changed. It's time to change. So the profile of our rep will change, because it will be up to the rep based on what the needs are of the healthcare organizations, of the individual physicians, of group of physicians, to say, okay, who from the headquarters should I pull into the game? Is it about supply chain? Is it about medical scientific affairs, and so on and so forth? So I really believe that this is the model of the future. It's not about will the rep not exist anymore. It will be another kind of variant of the medical sales rep. And really, sorry?
Maybe to add to, you mean about increase the quality and decrease the quantity, right? To put it into the wider perspective.
I think everything will depend on the realities in the field, in the different countries. I can imagine that in certain markets it will be an upscale, whereas in others it will be a downscaling. So that's, I think, the natural balance which happens depending on the nature of the business you are having. But independently of that, it will be about quality, and it will become a lot more interactive, hence also challenging. And so the requirements of the people we have to bring in the sales organization will also have to change, and everything what is behind the training, the skills, etc.
Yeah. Hey guys, I have a question I have a quick question, right? And again, it's I'm curious, and Dirk, to your slide here, really nice. Do you think this is any different, let's say, profile than what, I mean, pharma and this industry has been trying to drive for the last 4 or 5 years? Like, you've always heard Rep 2.0, Rep 3.0. Is this the same profile that we're driving to? Is this accelerated, or because it's?
I think
it's
a good question.
Right?
Yeah, I think while there's some kernel of truth here, I think it's an oversimplification, assuming that the dynamics we had pre-pandemic kind of more or less play out post. I think companies going to have to, in the context of what the we spoke about it, what value service they actually provide to customers, not have a one size fits all, but really determine for their portfolio, for their customers, for their region, what is the mix between medical reps, service reps, and other channels of communicating services and content to customers will actually look like. So it might be a version of this, but to your point, Davidek, it's at a top line, it's not different what we've been talking about for a long time. but I think the truth underneath will look ultimately much more complex and different from what's here outlined.
Yeah, I fully aligned with what Marc just said, and also Davidek. What I want to show with this one is, yeah, exactly. That's the issue of our industry. We like to talk during years and years and years where we have to go to, but we don't do it. And I think also today, like we've seen with the transition to omni-channel, we were talking about it for so many years. Today, okay, we get propelled into it due to a crisis. So the reason why I like this slide is to say, okay, let's make this now finally happen. And I exactly agree, it has to bring value. So the customer centricity, because otherwise it will be locked down again and it will be a bad investment.
There is one aspect as well, is that if you want to create a data-driven organization, this is cultural. So if you say to someone you need to do this, they will work months to make it beautiful, right? They will they will strategize a lot, and culturally, what you want to teach is to say, go out there, build a landing page, put a bunch of recorded webinars, look at the Google Analytics and the recordings and the engagement, and come back and do it better next week, right? And that is also to break that kind of, it needs to be a gold standard before we release it, and that'll take 9 months to make it gold standard. That's not the way we do things. We believe in the data. And the second piece is, I always say that our Formula One car driver is a sales rep. But if you look at Formula One, and I know Dario likes also Formula One, and I don't know about you guys, but if you look at the recent races, it's all automated. But the game has changed.
That's absolutely true. Unfortunately, we speak about
you just have
quite small engines.
Yeah.
Please, Haider.
Automated gearbox. You have a gearbox. You have computers everywhere. Does it make the engagement of the public? But more people who will engage with you are really engaging with you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sales rep.
We lost you for a moment, Haider. Can you maybe check your microphone?
Yeah,
looks like the internet connection.
Yeah, might be.
Yeah.
The challenges of today's world.
Week. Yeah.
Exactly. Many people are using, I suppose, GoToWebinar, right? And the other tools, Zoom, etc. So the last question for today, the final verdict: will the medical rep format stay the same, or will there be a evolution? Maybe we can start with Marc, because here he can showcase some very interesting insights. What they found out at Indegene, and what are his personal opinion about that.
Dario, I have the honor to be the first on your new slide of failed predictions when we do this webinar in a few years from now, I guess. So, but in all seriousness, so again, I don't claim to know what's going to happen in the future, but in Indegene engaging with a number of clients to figure out what the dynamics are that are going to shape the future, I think that we can work on now. And we don't think that in the midterm, and definitely not in the long term, that the simple propagation of current digital dynamics will be the road to success. To do what you've done in the past and do more of it will not differentiate and actually lead to good customer engagement. We think that ultimately, though, the one constant that will stay is to develop a new or good customer experience in the context of a changed environment will be a winning strategy. So what is that changed environment be driven by? And then determine what will your customers need in that context will make you successful. So first of all, we expect, and so on, we're calling this the digital reset, if I can throw out that catchphrase, seems to resonate very well. So we're not just digital continuing, but we're resetting. So first of all, we're expecting some dramatic changes in society. Will the restaurants and pubs be filled with people anytime soon? I think it will look different. But also the way that people consume goods, retail, all those things will change. And with that, the expectations of customers, what type of service they expect and engagement they expect from their suppliers, the companies will have dramatically increased. There will be increased pressure on us also in our industry, but in every other one, to deliver higher against those customer expectations. On the other hand, we'll see things happening at the macro level with changes in government regulations. We spoke about already of HIPAA compliance being relaxed or probably have to be adjusted for this new world. So a lot of the changes that offices and our customers are making to reopen will be voluntary, but there will be some things coming down in terms of workplace safety and other regulations that will be mandated for us in order to be able to continue safe operation. Even as a pharma company, you want to think about, what's your liability in keeping reps safe if you keep sending them into doctors' offices in this environment before there is a vaccine and this pandemic could resurge maybe sometime later this year. So there'll be a mix of voluntary and government regulations. And with that, there'll be a shift in our industry about the priorities that we have, right? So they won't necessarily go away, but we're seeing certain clinical trials being delayed, and, shifts in the portfolio. And then on the commercial side that we're interested mostly here is, okay, the focus on what we had in getting us commercially ready for a new or improved commercial model, is there going to be increased urgency? And we see two types of customers right now. There's a large number of customers that feel most comfortable of taking the existing reach and frequency model and translating that into a new world. And trying to basically answer the question on how can we maintain reach and frequency when the reps can't push their way in the office anymore. And there's another group of customers that are saying, well, maybe the entire model has to change and not be about reach and frequency primarily. How else can we engage with customers and measure success in order to ultimately drive financial success? And again, I don't have the answer, but this is the kind of framework in which our customers are defining what a good customer experience will look like in order to drive successful strategies.
Thank you, Marc. Haider, we can continue with you.
Yeah, so I would say for us, do you hear me? Yeah, is it working?
Yes, it's working.
Yeah. So we'll look into, do we have the same behavior change triggers in front of us? So will a doctor come and change his behavior because he saw a sales rep or an MSL, or will we have much more layers that will change that behavior? I believe that we will have a world where the doctors or any stakeholders will have, first of all, like a stack of decision making assistant that will filter the need of having a sales rep. If you look at already Alexa types of solutions, I always take this example internally, not to stress people, right, but just to make them more adaptable to change. What will happen if tomorrow a doctor will ask a question to an Alexa device and he will have only one answer, which is a preeminent one? And if that answer is making him avoid the need of talking to a sales rep, what should we do? Right? So for me, there will be a dramatic change in terms of how other industries are shaping the way our doctors will start also to react against us, and our sales rep, if they don't have this hospitality management type of mindset, almost like working in the hotel industry or touristic industry, then it will be quite hard if we are just coming with a briefcase and just pushing a message. Even if this briefcase just become digital with PDFs, right? So that's kind of for me where I'm trying to make the team and the front line much more adaptable, much more on the listening mode, and potentially capturing those needs so that we create new services that potentially would take us beyond classical drug selling.
Do you think that the number of field users will be decreased?
I would say the quality, I would say the pressure will be on the quality of each interactions, and the value added by each interaction will be higher. So depend on what you're selling. If you're selling a change of behavior, and basically you do at scale with those new digital tools more with less potentially, But potentially you can also identify new lines of services and added value, like coming back on what Davidek was sharing. If your added value is becoming much more service oriented, then it's up to each company to put a P&L behind those service and start, developing new relationships. Right? So that's, for me, is whether a pharma company is agile enough to spin off a service company to its key stakeholders. That's a good question to ask, right? So some of them will do, some of them will not.
Exactly. I think Haider is exactly right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Davidek?
No, Marc, you can go, buddy.
No, Haider's exactly right. There's not going to be, I just think there's going to be a lot higher scrutiny of the value that reps provide for certain portfolios and in certain markets versus the general assumption that reps is the better solution if you can apply them. So it will just be more critical eye and more data-driven decision-making of if you need more reps, less, or keep it the same. Sorry, go ahead, Davidek.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to the scenario. What does it look like when the dust settles, right? Is it actually, are we going to go back? Because again, we are creatures of habit, right? So people are going to try to get back to the old normal. So both on the customer side, but also our side, right? So you will see many cases where we're going to try to do the same thing as we were, and it might work, right? It depends on how far and how critical this gets. With that said, I think there's going to be a couple people that will stand up and actually shape what the new normal looks like, right? And that's the question: is who's that going to be, and how are we going to do that? And as they continue to add value to their customers, right, then that's going to shape what the new normal will be. So kind of back to the question: will the medical rep format stay the same? I think it's been changing year over year, right? It's always changing. In regards to the field force size, that's always been changing as well. If you look at specific companies, right, it fluxes up and down depending on the products. But it really depends, right? Whether you're in OTC, whether you're in generics, whether you're in specialty, it depends on within specialty, what specialty you're in. Are you just another, a new therapeutic entity, or is it just an add-on, right? So it really, there's a lot of, things there. But one thing I will say is there will still be a need for people, yes, but I think there will still be a need for people to add value. So I think, again, the days of, and that's been dying forever, right? Even when I was a sales leader, right? The days of just showing up, hey, Johnny, how's the kids? How's everything going?
Exactly.
Great, can you give me some more scripts? That's kind of over. But some people will still hold on to that. But I mean, it's a shift, right? That there's an old guard has to shift out, new guard comes in, and it's a pendulum, right? So it's we'll see, right? We're not, if we knew we wouldn't be here right now, but it's I think we have the opportunity to shape, let's say, Dario, kind of what that future will look like.
Thank you, Davidek. Dirk?
Yeah, just for the sake of time, I will just a couple of short additions. I think if definitely the world is changing, we know that already. But at the end of the day, we always will be selling something. If it is a solution, if it is a bundle, whatever it is, so that will stay a metric which is important. The question will be is if you want to have a change in culture and how we get to these results is, will we be willing to put other incentive plans in place? Is the C-suite willing to go and discuss with the shareholders to align on this kind of new model, that the new currency is the value at HEP level, which could be a new version of the net promoter scores, etc., etc. So still a lot of questions which will need to be answered, and the role and the involvement and the leadership of the C-suite will be critical again, together with the investor community.
Thank you, Dirk. In the meantime, we asked some very interesting question to our audience, which is how fast did you move your reps to digital? As you can see, the answers are just coming in. So we have more than 20% already voted. I would kind of like to ask everyone to vote to that. So we have already like 50% of the voters. You can vote as well, dear panelists. So let's see. I will close that poll and I will share the results. So less than 5 days, 34%. Well, digital transformation is finally done, right?
Yeah.
How you comment that?
I think it's very subjective question, right? It depends on what do you mean by digital, right? Are reps using WhatsApp or their phone to call the customers because they physically can't? Or is it, we have a fully integrated MCM plan on how we're going to truly, service our customers in every channel? I doubt people have that set up in 5 days, right? It's either you had it existing or not.
Yeah, and I would say, Dario, it would be interesting when you have your Dubrovnik meeting in October, or September to do a check. What is the status at that moment?
Exactly. We should ask that. I completely take your point. Another question, did you implement it or consider to implement some of those tools, multiple answer selection? Let's see the result from that one. You're, of course, able to vote as well. So we are at 20%, growing. Let's see. Well, so far we have like more than 70% for video engagements. We have like almost 60% on remote presentations. So close the pool. Let's show the results. I would say that this was expected, right?
So I'd like to ask one question, maybe to to the people also listening to this. It's a good stress test, right? When you look into this question, and I know it was around digital reps, but whole companies are staying patient-centric and developing patient-centric solutions. It's funny to me to see that we are literally going into B2B, pretty much a lot of B2B interactions. So we tend to forget about all those services that we, before the COVID-19, we were trying to push.
Thank you, Haider. And last question for today, will things in the field return into normal after the pandemic finish, or we will still use the remote engagement channels? What's your opinion about that? Let's see, the votings are coming in, more than 20% already. Don't be shy, nobody is knowing your result, right? Okay, so we are at 30 and something percent. Let's wait for another second. Okay, close the pool and share the result. Back to normal, only 13%, very interesting. And digital will be accelerated further, more than 50%. Well, that's, I would say, very interesting, right?
So Dario, it's interesting. We hear from some clients that in China, for example, where businesses and offices are open again, doctors prefer still not to see reps. And again, there might be a short-term trend, being kind of traumatized from the recent experience. But in the US, we're seeing doctors implementing virtual waiting rooms for their patients within weeks. Software technologies we're offering, like a check-in from your cell phone and waiting in your car or somewhere nearby. So I really wonder if we're overestimating however much benefit the face-to-face brings, how willing doctors are to include people walking into offices and hospitals, and what safety risk that poses.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Dirk, please go ahead.
Just wanted to say, building on what Marc said, it will be interesting to see, but at the end of the day, for me, if it is now face-to-face or it will be a virtual face, okay, it will still be a face. I would like
Davidek,
to
Haider,
Yeah.
would you like to add, based on those results, your opinion as well?
Yeah, so I would say definitely it gives a boost to some of the country that were on the low maturity scale. So they don't ask questions. They are just copying, pasting what the mature countries are doing. So I will say, in that sense, that we will gain in digital maturity in companies.
I agree.
Okay, so thank you once again. Thank you very much for today's webinar. I think it was very interesting. We will, of course, publish this webinar on our YouTube channel, so anybody who didn't have the chance to participate can listen later on. Once again, thank you very much, Davidek, Haider, Marc, and Dirk. We should definitely do it. Maybe we should do a sequel, like 1 or 2 months later, to see if we were wrong or if actually the things went back to normal or radically changed. So thank you very much once again. Also on your screen, you can see the announcement for our next webinar, which is coming on 23rd of April. Is patient engagement on hold? I think also very interesting topic. You can, of course, register very soon. Once again, thank you very much and stay negative.
I stay positive.
Positive.
Well, I understand what
Take
you
care,
say.
everyone. Be safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy. Be safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Take care.